So good morning, welcome to this demo theater on publishing your own network analysis services to your own ArcGIS Enterprise. I am Dilesh Mandloy. I work as a product engineer on the network analyst team, and I'm responsible for all the web services, routing web services in ArcGIS Online as well as ArcGIS Enterprise. So before we start, all the slides that I'm showing in this demo theater is available at this URL right now. So if you want to take a picture, I would say take a picture of this slide and then you can just listen me and talk and show me things, and you don't have to take any notes or anything. So I'll pause for a few seconds while people are taking note of this URL. Okay, so some show of hands, how many here consider themselves as ArcGIS Server Administrator, ArcGIS Enterprise Administrator, and are responsible for publishing services? Okay, good, a lot of them. So I don't have to talk much about ArcGIS Enterprise. And how many of you have used Network Analyst before? Published some services or, okay, a lot of you. So that's good, because what we are going to cover is briefly some network analyst concepts that are absolutely fundamental in whatever type of routing service you're trying to publish. I use network analysis and routing interchangeably. Routing services, network analysis services, consider them one and the same, whatever I say. Then we will see what is an enterprise publishing workflow, different types of services that you can do network analysis with. And then we'll see, once we have published the services, how we can use them. So let's first look at the concept. So ArcGIS Network Analyst as a product allows you to do analysis on transportation networks. So in ArcGIS, there's other types of networks like utility networks, gas, electric, sewer, or water. Network Analyst is not focused on that. It is focused on transportation networks like streets, and we are not talking about those other networks. So if you are mistakenly here for utility networks, we are not going to talk anything about utility networks in this session. So ArcGIS Network Analyst allows you to solve problems on transportation networks, and we provide these 6 solvers out of the box. Solvers are what we then convert into services, and then you access them over the web using the WebGIS pattern. So these 6 solvers or services, as they will become, are one for point-to-point routing, where you can find best route between one or more stops in the sequence that you specify, or ask the solver to optimize the sequence. Then there is the closest facility, where from a given location you can find, you can ask the solver to say, give me 2 closest or 3 closest, and then give me the best route to reach those locations. Or you can say, from my set of stores, find me all the areas that I can cover within 5, 10, 15 minutes of driving or walking or trucking modes. Then there is the origin destination cost matrix, where you can say, for all of my origins, give me the time and distance to every single destination, so that maybe I can then do further proximity analysis on it. Then the 5th one is location allocation, where given a set of facilities and a set of demand points, let's say you have 10 stores and you have to serve all the customers, this solver can figure out 3 best, so that the maximum number of customers are within 5 minutes of each store. So out of 10, it's going to pick you the 3 best, so that you can cover the maximum amount of population. So solving location problems that way. And then the last one is the vehicle routing problem, where we optimize a fleet of vehicles. So let's say you have a fleet of 5 vehicles and you have 50 orders to visit. How would you divide up the work between those 5 vehicles and 50 orders? So you use this solver, and it will produce you 5 routes, 1 per vehicle, and each route probably will take 10 orders, and it will also give you the sequence along with a lot of other constraints that you can specify, like time windows and a specialty and a whole lot of other things. So these are in general the capabilities that are available as part of Network Analyst. What we are going to see in this demo theater is how to make sure all of this capability is available as web services in your own ArcGIS Enterprise, so that you can build apps against those services. So I talked about different analysis capabilities. Now, in order to do those analysis, you need some kind of data on which that analysis is performed. So that is the street data, which in ArcGIS needs to be modeled as a network data set. So you take your real world street data where you have one-way streets and overpasses and underpasses, all those rules, speed limits and all of those rules, and you model that into something called as a network data set that you stored in a geo database, and then you use this network data set to perform these 6 different analyses that you have. So without this network data set, you will not be able to create any of your services. So this is absolutely critical in order to get network analyst functionality working. So you might be wondering, where can you get street data from? Now, if you don't have any street data, well, Esri offers a product called Street Map Premium, which comes with a pre-built network data set for any region in the world. So you can purchase that product. There are 2 versions of that product. One is a licensed read-only, which means you cannot modify that. You can use it, but you cannot modify. There is another product called Street Map Premium Custom Roads, where along with the streets that we provide, you can also add your own streets, and that way you can have a hybrid kind of a network data set, and then you can use that to publish all of these services. Or your organization might have, they might maintain their own street center lines, so you can create a network data set out of that data, or go to some open source like OpenStreetMap, where I've provided a link for OpenStreetMap editor that Esri maintains, which allows you to get data from OpenStreetMap and then convert it into feature classes, and then you can convert that into a network data set using ArcMap software. So now we know what Network Analyst can do and what it needs to do its stuff. So now let's see ArcGIS Enterprise. Most of you are familiar with ArcGIS Enterprise and must have seen this or similar slides elsewhere. So I'll just put this in the context of routing services. So in ArcGIS Enterprise, you need 1 or more ArcGIS servers that will host your routing services. You will have, again, maybe another server or dedicated servers that are acting as your hosting server. You may have a server that acts as your portal, so that way all the services can be discovered. But more or less, we are focusing on ArcGIS server where you are hosting or where you will be publishing 1 or more routing services. ArcGIS Enterprise was previously called ArcGIS Server, where it was just one product, but now ArcGIS Enterprise comes with many different things to make up the full stack. So you have the portal, the server, and the data store. We are focusing mostly on the server stack of it, where we are going to publish all of the different services. So what are these services? So these are essentially some, you can think of it as resource that's running on your server and that is doing all the computation on the server. Contrast this with, say, if you're not using web services, you are running that computation on your own machine, your laptop or your desktop, and everything happens there. As opposed to a service allows you to do the same thing on some server, and so your client could be a browser-based client that just submitting requests, waiting for the response, and then drawing the results. ArcGIS Server allows you to publish many different types of services. Network analysis capabilities are covered through these 2 service types, network analysis service and geoprocessing services. So we'll talk about those 2 in a few minutes. So now how do you go about publishing services? So there's a 3-step workflow that you need to follow. You need to author the resource using ArcGIS desktop software. Then you publish that resource as a service to your GIS server, and then you start using those services. So now to publish network analysis services, there are 2 types. There is a geoprocessing service and then there's a network analysis service. They support all the capabilities. Why we have 2 types? Because of the different use cases. Let's say a good way to think about them is, if you want very fast execution of your services, you would want to pick the network analysis service option. If you want to do batch processing, like process lots and lots of features, then you would end up using geoprocessing services. Now, how do you go about those 3-step workflow that I talked about? The numbers here indicate that 3-step workflow. So if you are publishing a geoprocessing service, you run 1 or more geoprocessing tools available within the server toolset in the Network Analyst toolbox. There is 1 tool per solver. You run them, you take the result of the tool, and then you publish that result as a geoprocessing service. For network analysis service, which is essentially a map service with a network analysis capability, you create a map document, create the different network analysis layers in that map document, and then publish that map document as a network analysis service and turn on the network analysis capability when you are publishing the service. So I talked about services, different types, 6 solvers, 6 different services, 2 different service types. Doing all this manually can become cumbersome. I was doing services for a long time and I used to do it manually, and I just got tired of publishing services one by one. And one day my manager told me, well, we need to document all this so people can do it themselves. And I said, no, this will be very difficult for everyone. So at that time I was thinking, can this be made easy? You have a network data set, you have your ArcGIS Enterprise server, 1 or more servers, you want to publish all the services. Can we make this simple so that it can be done easily without going through a lot of different steps and so on? So yes, it can, and that's what I'm going to show you in this. It is done through this utility called Publish Routing Services that is available in ArcGIS Enterprise. So what is this utility? So this is a command line tool that ships with ArcGIS Enterprise. It will be available if you install ArcGIS Server on your server machines. So it takes in a network data set as input, your server credentials like the admin username and password, and some few other things like where you want to create the output, and then it will go ahead and create all those different services that I talked about. So it will create the geoprocessing services, it will create the network analysis services, and it will go ahead and publish those services. Now, if your server is federated to a portal so that you are using the full ArcGIS Enterprise model, then this tool will also take those services that it publishes and register them as utility services in your ArcGIS Enterprise, so that apps that rely on the enterprise portal would be able to discover these services, and then you can use them in out of the box apps. We are going to see this in use in a couple of minutes. Now this tool requires a network analyst extension license to be available on your server, and it is included out of the box in ArcGIS Enterprise 10.6 or later. But if you are say still using ArcGIS Enterprise 10.5 or 10.5.1 versions, then a similar version of this tool is available on GitHub. I have provided a link and you can use that. It does the same thing, but it runs as a geoprocessing tool. So you need ArcMap to be running that tool, and then you need to connect to a server. So it's slightly different, but it provides the same functionality. And I would highly encourage you to use ArcGIS Enterprise, because we have stopped maintaining that 10.5 version of the tool, and we do all the bug fixes and everything on this version of the tool. So now what does this tool create? I was telling it publishes all the services. The screenshot may not be clear, so let me just switch back here. And once the tool is run, I've already run the tool on my machine. Is this visible at the back? Yeah. So what this tool does is it will create a folder called routing in your ArcGIS server. And then within that, it will create these 4 different services. So there is a network analysis geoprocessing service, which essentially has one geoprocessing tool per solver. So this will be made up of 6 different tools because we have 6 solvers. Then it has the network analysis map service. So this is the fast synchronous service with the network analysis capability. Then there is network analysis sync, which is the synchronous version of all the geoprocessing services. This one is an asynchronous geoprocessing service, so you can do batch jobs using this service. This one is a synchronous geoprocessing service. And then it also publishes a utility service that is required by the other tools and apps so that they can work with these services. So these are the services that the tool will end up creating. I was also talking that this tool will also register these services with register these services as utility services in your enterprise portal. Now, why is this important? This is because if you're using ArcGIS Enterprise, apps come to your portal and then it asks the portal, okay, what are all the routing services in my portal? And if you don't register these services, then those apps will not discover any of the routing services, even though the services are there on your server, and so those services will not be used. Now the tool will do this for you. Why I bring this up is, let's say you initially start with a non-federated server and you publish these services, then the tool is of course not going to register these services with your enterprise portal. Then you decide to federate your server, then you need to go and do this manually. As opposed to if you're starting with a server that is already federated with the portal and then you run this tool, then it will go ahead and do this part for you. So let's see this tool in action. So as I was saying, this tool comes with your ArcGIS Enterprise. Now I have ArcGIS Server version 10.6 installed on this machine, and it is a command line tool written in Python. So you need to run it with the Python interpreter that comes with ArcGIS Server. So that's this python.exe, and then this tool will be alongside your. So under tools folder in ArcGIS Server, there is a publish routing services, and then within that there is publish routing services.py, and this is a command line tool with certain options. So you can do -h, and this should print all the different options supported by this tool. It takes in a username, a password, that is the primary site administrator username password, the name of your server machine, the name of your portal machine in case the server is federated, the network dataset, and then a folder where it can write out all the service definitions. So again, there is some help here. In the slides, you will also find a link for the help documentation of this tool where we describe what kind of functionality it has, and if you're using a StreetMap Premium dataset, you need to license that, or if you're using your own network dataset, then it needs to follow. It needs to have these rules on it, like have travel modes, have directions be defined on it, and if those are not present, the tool will return an error saying this thing is missing for your network dataset, and so on. So you provide, essentially, if you think of it logically, you give a network dataset, give the credentials of your server, and then this tool will go ahead and publish all those services. Now it takes about 10 to 15 minutes, so I'm not going to run the tool. I have run this tool, and that's those are the services that it created, which I showed you. And if you're not using 10.6, then this is the GitHub link where you can find this tool and the instructions, and you can download it from there. But as I said before, I would encourage using 10.6 or later version because it's included in the software itself. So let's get back to the slide. So some quick tips and tricks. So if you have published routing services before, I would say start using this tool now, because it is essentially automating all the work that you were doing, and it is also beneficial in the sense this tool will create services that you would not usually create otherwise, and those services are actually required by the apps so that they can work properly, and we will see what those apps are in a minute. But if you were before publishing, in this talk itself, I talked about, okay, you can run a geoprocessing tool that does network analysis and then publish that as a geoprocessing service. You can do that, but I would say don't do that, because you will not be able to do everything correctly, and then you will miss a service or not publish it correctly, and the apps will not work. But the tool will take care of all the heavy lifting for you, so that way you are always getting the right things. The other tip that I would like to mention is, say if you're upgrading from different versions of ArcGIS Enterprise, you had ArcGIS Enterprise 10.6 and now you upgraded to 10.6.1. So the services, say you had already published the services using this tool at version 10.6, when you upgrade, the services will get carried over, but they might not be using the latest functionality of ArcGIS Enterprise 10.6.1. So as a recommendation, I would say first manually go to ArcGIS Manager, delete that routing folder after your upgrade is done. That would delete all the services in that folder, and then rerun this tool after you have done the upgrade. The tool guarantees that the REST API of the services will be exactly the same, so none of your apps will break. It will preserve the URLs and everything. So I would highly recommend doing that, because that way you would get all the latest benefit of the version of ArcGIS Enterprise that you're upgrading to. Same thing applies for the data updates. Let's say you're using StreetMap Premium, which updates for North America at least 3 times a year. Your organization gets a data dump every 3 months or 4 months. I would say whenever you are getting new data, delete all the services, publish them again. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to completely publish all of the different services and make sure all the configuration is correct. The tool will take care of you. Again, this will make sure that if we added a new attribute to StreetMap Premium dataset, simply upgrading it in place is not going to work. But if you republish the services, they will reread all the datasets and then it will be fine. So now we've seen we publish services. Now, once you have done this and say you're using ArcGIS Enterprise, these services can be used in a lot of the out-of-the-box apps. So one among them is the map here. This is if you go to your enterprise portal and you click map, the app that comes up is called map here. So the routing capabilities are enabled through many different options in this app. One is the directions button that allows you to do point-to-point routing. And then there are different analysis tools, few in the proximity tool set and few in the find locations tool set. All of these tools come alive once you run this tool and publish the services. Now, if one of the service is missing, these tools will not show up. So that's why doing it manually is not such a good idea, but using the tool is useful because it will make sure all of these tools come alive once your publishing is done. That was map here. If you are using ArcGIS desktop apps like ArcMap, then you can make a connection to your server, and then these geoprocessing services can be accessed as any other tool. So as I was telling, the network analysis is the async geoprocessing service with 6 tools, 1 per solver, and then you can use this as any other geoprocessing tools. Or if you are in ArcGIS Pro, you connect to your enterprise portal, and then from the analysis gallery, you go into the network analysis area, and then you can run the analysis and connect to the portal, and the analysis will happen on the portal. So we are going to see this in a quick demo. So I am on this machine where I had my portal, and this was the server where also I had published all of my services. So now if I go to my organization and look at edit settings, utility services, then within directions and routing, you can see there are like 10 different services that you need to configure, and all of these are automatically configured by that tool. So if I say route asynchronous, it has configured the geoprocessing service. If I do route, it has configured the map service that I had, and a server service that I had. So the tool does this configuration. If your server was not federated and then you federated later on, you would have to configure this manually yourself by putting in the right URLs here. So that's the configuration part. Now let's get to the map, and this was the directions button that I talked about. So in this case, it's now reading some of the options from the services. Let me also start ArcGIS Pro meanwhile, so that we can see how we can be using these services from ArcGIS Pro also. So let's get back. So these travel modes are actually coming from one of the utility services that we published. And this is the simple directions button where if you're doing the analysis, this solve is actually now happening on your own server where you have published all of the network analysis services using the functionality. So this at this point is very similar to ArcGIS Online, but everything is happening in your own infrastructure behind your own firewall. So if we are in Pro, I am signed into my portal. So this is the name of my machine. So I am signed into my portal. And then if I go on the analysis gallery, then within that I have network analysis. This is again initializing against that portal. While this is happening, I also show the analysis tool that also can make use of these services. So within analysis, you have use proximity, and then these 4 tools here, they allow you to do, so create drive time areas will do service areas for you. Find nearest is finding one or more closest. Plan routes is for the fleet of vehicles. connect origins to destinations is doing 2-point routes. I guess Pro is being picky for this demo, so let's switch to ArcMap and see if we can connect to these services and then use them from ArcMap. So let's add a base map. So the data set that I used was Street Map Premium North America. So my services would work anywhere in North America. So let's just zoom here in Southern California. And then, as I was saying, you need to make a GIS server connection. Okay, so that's my connection. Within the routing services, I'll see all of these tools. Let's do something that, let's run service area here. Okay, so let's drop in one facilities. Change this travel mode to be walking time. So now at this point, if we come back and if we are lucky, you see instances in use is 1. So the service is running on our server here, and then you can see the results being did. So I did walking, and those are the 5, 10, 15 minute walk times from the point that I clicked. So once you get the services published correctly, you can go ahead and use them in a lot of the different apps. And if you have seen ArcGIS Online, we have these exact same services in ArcGIS Online, and they work from the same apps in the exact same way. So by using this tool, say you cannot use ArcGIS Online for some reason, you will be able to get that same capability on your own ArcGIS Enterprise. There are many reasons you should be using ArcGIS Online, and equally important reasons where you cannot use ArcGIS Online, but the capability wise, the network analyst services are the same across ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. It depends on whether you have data and whether you have licensed network analyst or not, or whether you're happy with the credit model. That should dictate which option you're using. The capabilities are exactly the same. So we'll wrap up. Please fill out the survey, give us your comments, what you liked, what you didn't like. And now I'll open up for questions. Yeah, once again, this is the URL where you can get the slides. Yeah, I'll open up for questions. Wait, let me come a bit closer so I can hear. Yeah.
So the inline
Yes.
tools,
Yeah.
how far back is that compatible? 10.4?
Okay, so the question is, how far back is that command line tool compatible? So this publish routing services tool is available with ArcGIS Enterprise 10.6 and 10.6.1. The command line one. There is a GitHub version of it which is not command line. It is like it runs through within ArcMap, and that is available with 10.5 and 10.5.1. So before 10.5, no, this will not be supported. 10.5, 10.5.1, you need to go to GitHub. 10.6, 10.6.1, and upcoming 10.7, you can just, it is there with the software, so you just use it. Yeah, next question. So the question is the Navigator app using a different routing service? The answer is Navigator app does not use any service. So Navigator app does all the routing on the device itself. So it is, we have plans so that it can use services in future, but the current version of Navigator and the one that will come out in 2 months' time is doing routing on the device. Yeah.
So you showed that they had, it looks like the utility publishes the GP service tool.
Yeah.
You also showed that you can publish just like kind of like the reach check the box and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When do you, I assume the utility just does GPUs, right?
Yeah.
When do you need the other type of service?
So the question is, when do you need the map service with network analysis capability versus geoprocessing service? So I would say if you have resources on the server, you should publish both types, because the directions button that I showed in the map here is using the map service with network analysis capability, because it is meant to do quick interactive routing and not a batch processing of routes, right? But the geoprocessing services are meant for batch processing. So when I ran the tool from within ArcMap, it was hitting the geoprocessing service, the directions button was hitting the map service. So different apps can use different services. So that's why I would say the recommendation is to just publish all of them, and the tool will do that. The command line utility will go ahead and publish all the different types of services for you, so you don't have to worry about have I published all the services or not. Yeah, question. Yeah.
We're running a network. We're running a roads and highways, and another tool, transcend spatial tools. How easy is it to integrate those tools into the network analyst services?
So the question is, they are using a couple of tools, roads and highways, and which
third party thing called.
Yeah, so how easy it is to integrate network analysis services. So what you would need is a network data set. Once you have a network data set, you can publish the services, and then the services have RESTful APIs, so you can integrate it with your own apps using any of the SDKs that we have. So all these services are well supported in all the different SDKs, JavaScript or all the runtime SDKs, so they should work. But you need a network data set and an extension license on your server so that you can at least have this functionality.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think we do have both.
Yep.
Are there restriction or limitation to use those services inside the web builder for analysis reasons?
Okay, so the question is, are there any restrictions to use these services inside Web App Builder? The answer is no. Sometimes, like in ArcGIS Online, these services have limits. Like say if you're doing origin destination cost matrix, we only allow you to do 1,000 origins and 1,000 destinations. But if you are doing it in ArcGIS Enterprise, because it's your own server, there is no limit. You can solve any number of problems, any size problem. That it depends on the server resources that you have, right? So oftentimes customers come to us and say, no, ArcGIS Online is great, but there are limits on the service. I cannot solve bigger problems. Then we often recommend them, go use ArcGIS Enterprise. You get the exact same capabilities and you will not have any limits, because ArcGIS Online is shared by a lot of customers, and we cannot give dedicated resources to just one request that might consume all of our resources. So that's why we often say you can use ArcGIS Enterprise, and the capabilities are exactly the same. So there's no difference. The difference would come with the street data. If you don't have very high quality street data, the results may not be as accurate. But once you have a very high quality street data like Street Map Premium, in fact in ArcGIS Online we use Street Map Premium ourselves. So if you're using Street Map Premium, you're pretty much getting the same data that you get in ArcGIS Online also. Yeah. So I'll be available here, and there's also right behind this, there is network analyst analysis. I'll be there all afternoon. So if you have any questions, feel free to stop by and enjoy the rest of your conference. Thanks for coming.